I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. We are coming to you a little bit early this week. Hope you guys are getting excited about Week 10. I'm just excited to see somebody who's not in my immediate family. We have been under a blizzard that started Tuesday night and is still expected to go until sometime Saturday morning. So it's looking like the Hawk system in our neighborhood.
Coming out of the gate hot, winter is.
Yeah, I mean, it was 80 degrees. It hasn't even been 2 weeks because right the day before I left for Disney World, which was literally 2 weeks ago, it was 80 degrees, and we came back. We got a few spits and starts and some dour weather last Thursday for Halloween. It was chilly. And we'd had some spits, but what started Tuesday night, Tuesday was pretty beautiful, but Tuesday night started coming down and it just has not stopped. The low liked us so much that it is parked here. So it feels very much like Orchard Park in December.
Well, there's a lot to be said for living in the mountains.
Yeah, it should be fun. We'll see if it clears out. I know my friend is helping run the Air Force game, and we're welcoming in Fresno. And I don't think Fresno has seen snow this year or maybe in their entire lives. So they may not be ready for what they're about to come into. Should be a fun time if you follow college football games. But we have an NFL game that kicks off in, I think, just about 2 hours. That'll be a nice divisional matchup between the Bengals and the Ravens. No T. Higgins tonight. No Isaiah Likely tonight. For me, that means Gesicki and Deontay Johnson are decent flex options. Dennis and I both have picked the Ravens on Tuesday. I'm sticking with the Ravens. Are you also sticking with the Ravens?
I am going to stick with the Ravens. I want to go with the Bengals, but I just think the Ravens, their defense is a little bit better. And, well, it was a barn burner last time, and I expect it to be again. Chase Brown is coming into his own for Cincinnati, but Derrick Henry can grind the clock like nobody's business. We did get a question over on the show's Twitter handle at Roundtable FF if you want to give us a follow. Roasty wants to know, Gesicki or Jameson Williams in the flex?
I'm taking Gesicki.
So am I. I mean, it's with Higgins out, Gesicki, he moves way up the depth chart when it comes to earning targets. I think he kind of moves a little bit ahead of even Josevich. And so I expect the offense is going to be Chase, Brown, and then Gesicki. And as much as I like what Jameson Williams brings to the Detroit offense, they may throw the ball 12 times. And
when you can run like they can, I mean, Goff has been incredibly efficient. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, they're starting him. But even Laporta hasn't been a lead pipe lock. I pulled Laporta out of one of my lineups and put in TJ Hawkinson today. So, I mean, Detroit's so good. They really haven't had to throw the ball all that much. Jameson Williams could get you 18 points or he could get you 1.8 points.
That's right.
Well, let's transition to the Sunday games. The first of those is I don't know what Germany did to us, but what we're doing to them is sending the 2-7 New York Giants to play the 2-7 Carolina Panthers. Dennis, last week coming off of a concussion, Tyrone Tracy cooled a bit. He is not on the injury report anymore. Carolina has been not too stout on the defensive end. How are you feeling about Tyrone Tracy?
I like Tracy, man. He's RB13 since week 5, and the Panthers give up the most fantasy points to running backs in the league. And the first couple games after Andrew Thomas got injured, I was like, this is it for the Giants. And they went out that next week and they just ran the ball all over their opponent. I forget who it is. I mean, I think part of it was they didn't put Evan Neal in. They put somebody else in over there. And, Tracy is just showing that if he keeps on this trend, he's going to be the most successful wide receiver to running back transition. I think that we've seen. I like his ability to get through the hole. He's got good burst. He's got really good vision. And with the way that the Panthers play defense against the run, that plays right into what Brian Daboll is going to want to do, which is try to limit Daniel Jones's error opportunities. So there'll be plenty of throws to Malik Neighbors and lots of handoffs to Tyrone Tracy. And unfortunately, anybody who bought into Devin Singletary, it's me. I bought into Devin Singletary.
Well, I mean, he looked good for a couple of weeks and then got hurt, and turned out he wasn't the best running back on his team.
So it's unfortunately that is an accurate statement. So I like what Tyrone Tracy does. I think now with Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy, whoever the next quarterback there is coming in with some good weapons.
Meanwhile, for Carolina, Adam Thielen's still not practicing, not likely to be pulled off of IR this week, and they have traded Deontay Johnson and Jonathan Mingo. So how are we feeling about Xavier Legette?
I mean, you got to love Legette. He seems to have ascended fairly quickly to the top dog in that passing offense. Him and Jatavian Sanders. Legette's wide receiver 25 since week 4. And that's on I know we all kind of were like, they got to play Dalton, but Dalton, well, he was better than Young early. He wasn't a superstar by any stretch. So if Young kind of keeps playing at a serviceable level, Jatavian Sanders, the running game, and Xavier Legette as the top people, and then getting Adam Thielen back. I have a team that I was really hoping to get Thielen back this week.
I guess there's still a chance tomorrow, but he has not been practicing, which to me does not bode well.
It does not. No, it's a league I won last year, and I lost Thielen, I lost Pacheco, I lost Christian McCaffrey, and I lost Deebo Samuel for a stretch. I just lost Dak Prescott there. It's I'm trying to scratch together to make the playoffs and hope that some of my players get help. I lost Nico Collins on that team. The team was stacked, and everybody died. And now I'm just trying to hold on to a playoff spot in hopes that people get healthy. I think we can't move on past Carolina without mentioning the Chuba Hubbard extension. And as weird as it seems, because running backs don't matter, and Chuba is a Jag, I think there are teams that are looking at what Detroit's doing and thinking they can replicate it. I haven't had a chance to see how the contract breaks down, when they can get out. One of the first things that you see is, they spent all this money on Miles Sanders. They can get out of Miles Sanders' contract after this season for under $3 million in dead cap. So that's not an untenable situation. If Jonathan Brooks pans out, I think they're going to play him maybe this week. Maybe.
Well, they had to pull him off IR, so he's available. I think really what we should have taken away from the draft is there were no running backs in that draft that were going to be great for fantasy. The best, they're going to be parts of committee, because honestly, I'm not even that high on Trey Benson anymore. He can't even really command snaps away from Amari DiMercato. He's just been fine. He's like a rotational back. I think that's probably what Jonathan Brooks is too. That's been what Braylon Allen is. Marshawn Lloyd hasn't even been healthy enough for us to discover our sadness with him. I think that was this draft. They said it wasn't a good running back draft, and
they might have been right.
Yeah, so people that jumped up and took Brooks and Benson, like with the top 6 and rookie picks, are probably not feeling too happy about that. But none of the, other than quarterbacks, I don't know if I would say any of the drafts completely panned out like we expected. Malik Neighbors has been pretty good despite having a poor offense, but even Odunze and Marvin Harrison Jr. have been up and down. So
yeah, it's let's see how it works out. Teams want to have, I think back to, as an Ohio State fan, Woody Hayes always used to say, you need to have a pair and a spare, and we'll see what happens.
I am taking the Panthers in this one.
I'm going to go with the Giants. I'm going to ride that Tyrone Tracy train.
New England Patriots 2-7 at the 4-4 Chicago Bears. Speaking of rookies, Drake May out there, he's doing his best despite not having a great cast around him for fantasy. How are you feeling about him?
May is working hard. He's got a couple young guys I think he's developing some chemistry with. Kayshon Boutte has played the most snaps over the last 4 weeks. And May is, I just had it up here, he is QB9 over the last 4 weeks. Part of it is his rushing. I think I saw somewhere on Twitter today or yesterday that in the 3 games that May has started and finished, he has rushed for at least 60, or he's averaging 60 yards rushing in those games, which would put him in quite an elite group of quarterbacks. So I don't think that that's the goal. I don't think anybody wants Drake May to run that much. But he's put up over almost 18 points or more 3 of the last 4 weeks, with the 1 week being last week that he got knocked out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's not been too bad. I feel about him kind of like I feel about Bo Nix in this landscape. I like them in Superflex. I don't know if I'm putting them in necessarily trusting I'm going to get a top 12 week. Chicago's defense is actually pretty good, so see how it goes for them this week. Speaking of Chicago, they traded Khalil Herbert to the Cincinnati Bengals. Really clarifies their backfield, running through DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson. How are you feeling about those two?
Swift has looked good. He started off really slow, and then he got kind of hot. I think they're starting to manage his touches a little bit more with Roschon. Clearing Khalil Herbert out makes it more of a kind of a clear pecking order now. It's Swift, and then it's Roschon, and it's not a whole heck of a lot of anybody else after that. The thing the Bears need to mostly work on is developing consistency from the quarterback position. They've got 3 very good wide receivers in DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and Keenan Allen. And getting a passing game going will help DeAndre Swift. Swift isn't a little back. He's a 5'9", 209 coming into the league. So he does have the size to be, to do 15 to 18 carries a game. He's a good pass catcher. I think a lot of it comes down to when Caleb Williams has an off day, it affects everybody, including the running game. And Williams just hasn't developed that consistency yet.
I am taking the Bears in this one.
I'll take the Bears. I was trying to find a reason to take the road team, but
yeah, if it was a
after
better
taking
road,
the Giants on the road, can't go. I don't think I should go 2 shitty road teams in a row.
I'm taking a few road teams, not either of those two. Next up, we have the 7-2 Buffalo Bills at the 4-5 Indianapolis Colts. I will have a question for you from a listener about the Colts in a minute, but first for the Bills. On the wide receiver situation, no practice for Keon Coleman. He's looking more likely to miss the game. Cooper Samuel, Matt Collins, all limited. So how are we feeling about Shakir?
I think we feel good about Shakir now, even when Cooper is healthy. Coleman is going to be a little more touchdown dependent, but we know he's going to make some plays.
He's not likely to play this week. He's got a wrist injury.
But when he does play, the point I was getting to is that I think at the very least you should feel comfortable flexing Shakir, even if they have a full complement of receivers ready to go. I think Shakir has earned those targets. And so if everybody was healthy, I think Shakir's a 6-target guy, 6 to 7 targets. If 1 or 2 of them are out, he's, a 9 to 12 target guy.
Yeah, and I think it's possible Cooper will miss too. So I like Shakir as a wide receiver too this week. For the Colts, I was going to ask you how you're feeling about Jonathan Taylor, but we also have a user who is asking whether they should trade Jonathan Taylor and David Montgomery for Kyren Williams and Najee Harris. This is in redraft. I think I'd actually stay with Taylor and Montgomery, even though Taylor hasn't always been super impressive.
Yeah, let me see. So it's actually from a rushing yardage standpoint, it's very close. Taylor and Monty are the lower yardage guys. They're both around 500. And Harris and Williams are both around 600. It's 12 touchdowns to 10 touchdowns for the Taylor Montgomery side. It feels like a lateral move. I'm probably going to lean into the Kyren side, just because I feel like I've been so wrong on him, and he just keeps proving me wrong. And so I'm leaning into Kyren Williams.
So surprisingly enough, Jonathan Taylor is averaging more points per game than Kyren Williams.
Well, now that you put it that way.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of a lateral move. And if I would probably keep the 2 that I have. To me, it's not a trade that really appeals to me because they are kind of very similar, very close together, each side.
Yeah, I mean, I think the knock for Taylor is he missed a few games. I think a knock for Kyren Williams would be that their receivers are coming healthy. I like David Montgomery too. Montgomery is averaging more points per game than Najee Harris. You know what? Sorry. Kyren Williams is averaging more points per game than Jonathan Taylor. I was looking at the line below him, Kenneth Walker. I think with Flacco in there, I'm hoping Taylor will do better. I guess it's kind of a toss-up depending on how you feel about those guys.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those trades where if I see somebody make it, I'm not going, oh, that was awful. And if I see somebody pass on it, I'm not going, that was stupid. It's just it's a okay trade. It all come to me that feels like well who would I rather root for kind of trade because they're all very close together.
Yeah. So in general, though, how are you feeling about Jonathan Taylor?
I feel like he's still an RB1. I don't expect him to get hurt again this year. I think Joe Flacco provides a little better balance to the offense, though I think we saw last week that Flacco isn't a be all cure all to what ails them because he can have some bad games too. And with Pittman banged up and there's a lot of moving parts going on there in Indianapolis. I like Taylor. Like I said, if I roster him, I'm not looking to move him. In redraft, you would have to, I feel like I would need something. If I'm going to move Taylor for Najee Harris and Kyron Williams, I probably don't want to include Montgomery. I want to have somebody that's just slightly lower than Montgomery because that's the argument that I'll make. But to be honest, if I have Kyron, I'm going to make that same argument on the other side.
I am taking the Bills in this
So
one.
am I.
Next up, 5-4 Denver Broncos at the 8-0 Kansas City Chiefs. Dennis, what are we doing with the Broncos backfield?
I don't know. Staying away. I mean, I love Javonte, and to be honest, there are some locations that I have him on rosters. I don't really have a choice but to start him. Yeah. But he's just not getting the volume that I wanted, that I had hoped for, that relative to the other backs on the team, it would seem to warrant that he should get. So, if he's a flex high end, he's probably an RB3 with some RB2 upside.
That's pretty much exactly. He's sitting at running back 32 on the year, averaging 7.6 points per game. I think the one that's probably been a blow for more people is Jaleel McLaughlin, only averaging 4.6 points per game. Only has one game with double-digit points all season and has 6 games with less than 5 points. So Javonte is a flex for me. I know they keep talking about Audric Estime, but I'd have to see him get more than like 4 carries in a game before I was considering him. On the other side, how are you feeling about Kareem Hunt?
Sell. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco's coming back in the next couple of weeks, it seems. And I think Hunt will be the second back there. And, he may be back in that situation like he was in Cleveland, where he vultures a touchdown here or there, or he catches some passes here or there and makes some plays. I feel like it's a better football move to have Pacheco and Hunt. But I think when Pacheco comes back, he had earned the starting role, and I think Andy Reid gives it back to him and kind of lets him go.
I am taking the Chiefs in this one.
So am I.
6-3 Atlanta Falcons at the 2-7 New Orleans Saints. Dennis, limited practice for Drake London. Looks like he may actually be on track to play this week. How are we feeling about the Falcons receivers if he is in the lineup?
Well, obviously, I like it better with Drake London in it. If Marshawn Latimer plays, I probably like it a little bit less. But the Falcons receivers.
Marshawn Lattimore's not on the Saints anymore. He's on the Commanders.
Oh, dang, that's what I meant. Wrong team. Anyways.
Well, no, I mean, that's up until Tuesday, that was
right.
The team. So that probably makes you feel a little better then.
Yeah. Darnell Mooney has shown himself to be a very effective receiver. And Ray McLeod has stepped up and Kaderil Hodge has stepped up. I don't think either one of those I'm super comfortable starting. And we've seen Drake have a couple stinkers. And if this hip flexor, this hip pointer isn't isn't too bothersome, then I think London will be a wide receiver 3, maybe with wide receiver 2 upside. I hesitate to put him higher. I think he's got talent to be a wide receiver 1, and with Kirk, he's got a quarterback. I still think there's chemistry issues in Atlanta because they have Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts, who are elite level talents at their position, as well as Drake London. And then you've got Mooney and Algier, who are the next level at their positions. And, Algier rushed for over 1,000 yards as a rookie and then was replaced by Bijan. And the team still likes him, even with Arthur Smith gone. They're willing to give him equal rushing opportunities. And I think the Falcons, if they could split the carries 12-12 with Bijan and Algier and let Bijan get 7 targets, I think they'd be perfectly happy.
Meanwhile, for the Saints, Cedric Wilson not practicing, but is still listed as questionable. Chris Olave, doubtful meeting with concussion specialists. Obviously, Bub Means on IR now. So what are we doing with Saints receivers?
Firing up Mason Tipton, man. It's a mess in New Orleans. Last week Tipton played 76% of the snaps, Wilson 47%, and my buddy, your friend, my friend of the show, MVS played 41%. He had the third most snaps of the guys that are going to play. Now, I think MVS can provide that over-the-top threat. Run, win sprints. Maybe they take a shot. Maybe he converts. Maybe he doesn't. I think Mason Tipton is playing well for being a smaller school guy. Cedric Wilson, it was 4 years ago he signed that great free agent contract with Miami, and then they immediately traded for Tyreek Hill and drafted Jalen Waddle. Talk about, that was a Chuba Hubbard of wide receiver moves right there, wasn't it? Unfortunately for New Orleans, they fired their coach. Their quarterback has been injured, and he's coming back. The only guy you really want to start, I think, is Alvin Kamara. But in the aforementioned league where I've had McCaffrey and Pacheco and everybody injured, I lost that. I lost Dak. My other quarterbacks are Joe Burrow and Geno Smith. So I only had one quarterback this week. I actually traded Geno in a package and got Derek Carr to start for me. I know. I'm trying to claw my way back in, man. Trying to claw my way back.
Well, the Saints haven't had their bye week yet either. I don't think so.
I know. I'm looking at 2 weeks. Burrow hasn't had his either. So I've got 2 weeks going where I'm going to need to find another quarterback.
I am taking the Falcons.
So am I.
4-4 San Francisco 49ers at the 4-5 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Christian McCaffrey is back practicing, tracking toward coming off IR this week. If he does, are you starting him?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've said in the past often, if the team says that they're ready and the team is going to play him, then I'm going to start him. There are players, I guess, at certain levels that I'm less inclined to, but Christian McCaffrey is an elite player at his position, an elite fantasy performer. And while they weren't necessarily as forthcoming with his condition going into the offseason last year and starting the season this year, if they're going to play him, I'm going to play him.
On the other side, for Tampa Bay, we heard a few weeks ago it was going to be kind of a 3-headed backfield, but we haven't really seen Sean Tucker get that kind of run with no receivers. White and Bucky Irving have been in there. Wasn't great on Monday night, but are you feeling better about them in this one?
It's Cade Otton's world, and the rest of the Buccaneers are just living in it. White is playing Well, his issue has always been that he doesn't have great interior vision, and so he doesn't always do great running the ball inside. But he may be one of the top 3 or 4 pass catching running backs in the NFL. Bucky Irving has shown that he's got really good vision, and is a capable pass catcher. And then Sean Tucker came in when White was out and just exploded and had a phenomenal game. I think Tucker's a handcuff. He may be a handcuff to both of them. And they'll still give him, a series or a few snaps here and there. I'm not starting Tucker except in a 16-team league where we start 9. We've got 10 offensive players. We've got a lot of it's a 16-teamer that you're starting 10 offensive players. I'm throwing Sean Tucker in a lineup because I honestly, because Darius Slayton isn't playing.
I am taking the 49ers.
So am I.
Next up, 6-2 Pittsburgh Steelers at the 7-2 Washington Commanders. Might be the best game of the day. Mike Williams was acquired in trade by the Steelers this week. What are you expecting from him?
This week, I'm not expecting a lot. I think ultimately it ends up being a better football move than fantasy move, a la Deontay Johnson. He'll have some games where he pops off. We've seen Pickens disappear before, and I think putting a guy like Mike Williams on the other side of the field might make that happen a little more often than we would like for Pickens. But I think Pickens is going to be the clear one. Big Mike will be the 2. Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson will man the slot. Freiermuth and Darnell Washington at the tight end. So I think on a weekly basis, Williams is probably a low end flex when all things are clicking. With hopefully you're hoping for touchdown upside.
Meanwhile, for the Commanders, limited practice for Brian Robinson trying to come back from that hamstring injury. What are you doing with the Commanders' backfield?
I'm waiting for Brian Robinson to get a clean bill of health. He's the guy I want to roster there. Austin Eckler is more of a flex play, and you're hoping that they get behind a little bit and they have to throw the ball some so they can check it down to Eckler. But Washington's a good team, and they don't play from behind an awful lot. McNichols and Chris Rodriguez are non-entities. But I think when healthy, Brian Robinson is a low-end RB2, maybe high-end RB3.
I am going to take the Steelers in this one.
Against my better judgment, I'm going Commanders.
Minnesota Vikings 6-2 at the 2-7 Jacksonville Jaguars. Dennis, are we starting TJ Hawkinson this week?
It comes down to your options. Last week, thought I put it in here. Hawkinson played fewer snaps than Josh Oliver. I think it was something like 57 to 37 or something. It was his first game back from a major knee injury. I think that will continue to turn around. Hawkinson, as he rebuilds his football stamina, he's going to be the guy. Oliver will get relegated back into his backup position. Again, this week, I'm looking to see what my options are. We're starting to get better performances out of the tight end position now, but it's still not great as far as depth goes. So you may not have a better option. If I don't, I'm comfortable putting him in, but I'm trying to find somebody that's going to give me 10 points because I think Hawkinson's floor is like 5 or 6 right now.
Meanwhile, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Dearness Johnson, Tank Bigsby, and Travis Etienne all limited with injuries. Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. limited with injuries, and Trevor Lawrence limited with a shoulder injury. They went and acquired a quarterback, so it's looking like he may not be able to play. What are we doing with this passing game?
Well, first off, I'm going to hope Brian Thomas Jr. is healthy.
Enough to play, anyway.
Right. Honestly, I'd love to see a nice Mac Jones rising from the ashes story to close out the season. The downside of that is it would probably save Doug Peterson's job. So, I don't know. It's a healthy Brian Thomas gives them a threat that nobody else on the team can do. Gabe Davis, God bless him, but he's just so inconsistent. But who's the other guy? Tim Moore or some guy? Tim Miller?
No, Parker Washington is their third receiver.
Oh, that's right. I was thinking a different guy. Washington, he's a special team. He's a core special teams guy. He's a Kaderil Hodge, Khalif Raymond.
Saw 6 targets last week.
Well, they don't have anybody else to throw it to. So, it's really, I still feel like it's an Evan Ingram, Brenton Strange, Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne kind of day.
Both of them are beat up too. That's what, we're going to see. I'm taking the Vikings.
So am I.
Next up, we have the 2-6 Tennessee Titans at the 5-3 Los Angeles Chargers. Dennis, how are you feeling about Calvin Ridley?
So he's wide receiver 47. He's had some games where, he'll get like 8 or 9 targets, but only catch 2 or 3. And that was with Will Levis. I thought I saw a blurb on Roto World that Levis was healthy now. Again, I'm torn on the Levis Rudolph thing because I think you got to play Levis just to check off the box that he ain't it. But I think Rudolph probably gives him a better chance to win games. And we know he ain't it either. So Calvin Ridley is sort of that. They should give Calvin Ridley 15 targets a game. They should just force the ball to him, say, look, you're getting it every time we drop back. We're going to make you make plays. Just volume. Tony Pollard's look good. And if they can, I think they're supposed to be getting Tyjae Spears back. So that might give them a little bit of boost in the backfield. But Chigo Okonkwo hasn't developed. Tyler Boyd has not really stepped up. I think Nick Westbrook-Akini's had, touchdowns in 5 straight games or some crazy thing like that?
The last 2 games.
Well, it sure seems like a lot more.
He picked up after they traded D-Hop. Not that Hopkins was doing a lot for them either.
Yeah, I like Ridley, and I think he's probably got some wide receiver 3 upside. But the quarterback situation there just really puts a damper on it.
On the other side, we've seen the young receivers, McConkey and Johnson, picking it up for the Chargers. How are you feeling about them?
So McConkey's sitting at wide receiver 19. He's the volume guy. He's averaging about 6.5 targets, catching about 4.5, 55 yards, and 12.6 yards per catch. So he settled into what his role is. Quentin Johnston, he's the run after the catch guy, though he's wide receiver 62. He's the big play guy, only getting about 4.5 targets a game and pulling in 3 of them for 47 yards, but he's averaging almost 16 yards per catch. I think as long as Harbaugh and Roman keep using him to what his skill set is, I think Johnson provides some boom-bust appeal. And I think McConkey is coming on and establishing himself right now as the one. does this change a little bit? And do they bring in somebody next year that is a bona fide, alpha wide receiver? I don't think Josh Palmer is it. I think that with McConkey and Palmer and Johnston, you've got a lot of receivers that are okay, but none of them have really ascended to that level that we think that would help elevate Justin Herbert's play.
I am still taking the Chargers in this one.
So am I.
Next up, we have the 6-2 Philadelphia Eagles at the 3-5 Dallas Cowboys. Dennis Dallas Goedert off the injury report. So what are we doing with the Eagles pass catchers?
Well, from a purely pass catcher standpoint, it's A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and the tight end. From a player standpoint, when it comes to catching passes, it almost feels like it's A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley, Devonta Smith, and then whoever the tight end is. It's a bummer because they will get in games where they don't throw the ball a lot, and they kind of make sure AJ gets his, and Devonta Smith will get sacrificed a little bit in those games. Smith is a guy, he's very much, he could be the wide receiver one on about 20 of the teams in the NFL. But they went out and got A.J. Brown to stick across from him, and he's just a bully over there. And if the running game gets going and Saquon Barkley starts doing these magical wizard moves out in the open field, and it's tush-push time and Jalen Hurts is running, it can really negatively impact the secondary wide receivers in Philadelphia. But if I roster Smith, I've got to be. You got to be so deep to sit him. It's not funny. He's just too good.
Yeah, and A.J. Brown off the injury report too, so good news for him. Meanwhile, we know Dak's gone, Cooper Rush is in, CeeDee Lamb practicing in a limited capacity. Our friend Arturo says he's trying to trade CeeDee and no one wants him. That's got to be probably because of his value and not having a quarterback, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I would think so. Now, on the plus side, in 2022, I think it was 2022, Cooper Rush started 5 games. CeeDee Lamb, early in his career, was wide receiver 9. So they have some chemistry, and Cooper Rush gets the mission. They had a better offensive line then and a better running game then. The question becomes is, do they decide to see what they have with Trey Lance? Because that, I think, will negatively impact CeeDee Lamb.
I don't think Trey Lance should see the field, but
I think if Cooper Rush goes out this week and targets CeeDee Lamb 12 or 14 times and he pulls in 8 or 9 of them, I think trading him is going to be a lot easier.
I am taking the Eagles in this one.
So am I.
3-6 New York Jets at the 5-4 Arizona Cardinals. Last week, Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams were great. They've traded Mike Williams. Alan Lazard is on IR. We firing both Wilson and Adams up again?
Hell, and maybe even Xavier Gibson.
Nah, not for me.
Me
Brees
either.
Hall. I think with Brees Hall there, I'm probably be more likely to take a shot on Tyler Conklin if I was desperate at tight end because he seems to be getting goal line targets.
So Wilson is sitting at wide receiver 3 and Adams at wide receiver 17. I think they're both must starts. I do think that as the season goes on, we will see those rankings converge, not rankings, the performance. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them in the, both of them in the wide receiver, 10 to 14 range at season's end. In part just because Garrett Wilson is really, really good, and he's probably better than Devontae Adams at this stage of Adams' career. But Devontae Adams is Aaron Rodgers' guy, and he's going to make sure he gets taken care of.
So, how are you feeling about the wide receiver duo on the other side with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson?
I feel like I, left Tiffany's and went to Walmart. Um, I love Marvin Harrison Jr. He's still a wide receiver 23, but unfortunately, Kyler Murray is his quarterback, and Murray, isn't great. He's not super good. I think if they had a better passer, they would both be more productive. Michael Wilson's wide receiver 60. He struggles with injuries sometimes. I thought that Zay Jones would impact his play a little bit more when he came back, and he hasn't. So I feel like the two of them, we expected Harrison as a high draft pick to slot right in at one starting receiver position. But it feels like Michael Wilson has kind of grabbed a hold of that wide receiver 2 spot on the outside there and has been pretty good. He has some games where he makes the most of his targets. He's not going to get 10 or 12 targets a game, but on 5 or 6 targets, he's gonna make some plays for you. Occasionally, he'll break one off. He's a bigger receiver like Marvin at 6'3". I like both of them. Harrison is. I think I'm starting him every week. He's starting to slide down a little bit more into the wide receiver 3 range. Now, the last couple of weeks, they've used him on crossing routes more, and his productivity has increased rather than just throwing him the deep ball. If they stick to that, then he has the potential to slide back up the fantasy finishes. So I like both of them. I just wish they had a better pass thrown to him.
I know, and they're a first place team, but I'm going with the Jets.
So am I.
Sunday Night Football, 7-1 Detroit Lions at the 6-3 Houston Texans. We mentioned
Right,
earlier.
baby.
Jameson Williams back from his 2-game suspension. How are you feeling about him?
Not as good as Cole is, because Cole gets him to start back in the Fantasy Football Roundtable League. So, Jameson Williams is the Liam Neeson of wide receivers. He's got a particular set of skills, and he uses them very well. It just doesn't always yield a ton of production. He's fast. I think as he matures and becomes his route tree becomes more full, he'll get better. But they've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they've got Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. He's got some off-field issues, I think, and when you have maturity issues, it does roll over onto the field, and the decisions you make on the field and how well you prepare yourself, I think, can be affected. The team supports him. He's just got to keep earning their trust. And hopefully, if Detroit can throw the ball 30, 35 times, instead of 17, that's a good thing for all pass catchers involved.
Yeah, kind of a crucial year for him going down the stretch here, because I believe they have to make a 5th-year option decision this summer. So, meanwhile, for the Texans, there was some hope they'd get Nico Collins back, but he is not practicing at all. So, unlikely to come off the IR this week at this point in time. So what are you expecting from the Texans pass catchers?
More Tank Dell. That's what they have. They got Tank Dell. Bobby Woods will catch a few passes. Xavier Hutchinson, who I had a little more hope for, just hasn't seemed to have stepped up yet. Dalton Schultz, Joe Mixon. They need to protect CJ Stroud, because if he gets too much pressure, we've seen him put up, a 10 for 30 game. So a lot of it's going to come down to how much pressure Detroit puts on him. I don't have a lot of hope for the production on the Houston side of the ball.
I am taking the Lions.
So am I.
Before we get to Monday Night Football, we got this question from Dylan. He's forced to start one of these waiver running backs, Singletary or Akers. Try to trade for a running back or play Keaton Mitchell tonight, full PPR. Any thoughts? I'm not starting Keaton Mitchell in tonight's game. No.
I think Justice Hill has established his role as the other guy when Derrick Henry isn't getting stuff. And then you've got Lamar Jackson. There's Keaton Mitchell, unless you're getting points for special teams, I don't see a whole heck of a lot for
So
Keaton
I'm gonna disregard the trading because that's kind of theoretical. I'm not even sure what you could get if your choices are Singletary, Akers, or Mitchell. Both of us are out on Mitchell. I guess I would go with Singletary, but
I'd go Akers.
Akers is either way. I think you're like 4 or 5 points, maybe.
Well, they're pushing Ty Chandler out the door. It looked like last week, and Aaron Jones is notorious for sharing his workload. Tyrone Tracy doesn't look like, he's there. Akers looked pretty good last week. Who's Minnesota play again this week?
They're playing Jacksonville.
Yeah, give me Akers.
I'm still going to say I think Singletary.
But you're right.
More of a chance in PPR that he gets receptions because I don't.
It's a 4 to 7 point gamble.
Yeah. But I mean, if you have a good trade that doesn't kill you, maybe. But for 1 week, you probably just eat it and roll because I don't know what you would have to give up in trade either.
No one wants to be defeated.
No. Miami Dolphins 2-6 at the 4-4 Los Angeles Rams is our Monday Night Football game. Dennis, we were excited about Hill and Waddle when Tua returned, but in the 2 games that Tua has been back, Jalen Waddle has only caught 6 passes for a total of 41 yards. Now, I know he did get a touchdown last week, but he also caught 2 passes for -4 yards and that touchdown. How are you feeling about Waddle?
Devin Achane has just usurped his fantasy usability. And then in the passing game, Tyreek Hill is the clear number 1. I feel like Mike McDaniel is going to go back. He's going to try to get things balanced back up. I think aside, we know Achane was good and going to get a lot of touches. Not only has it impacted Waddle, but it's impacted Raheem Mostert extremely. But another guy that's kind of showed up in Miami and is impacting the passing game is Jonnu Smith. And so I think now they're doing some things a little bit different. It isn't only Hill and Waddle, and then we're going to run the ball with Achane and Mostert. Now you've got a serviceable tight end that's an athletic pass-catching tight end. I think it would be trading low if you tried to trade him. But if you're in a situation like the guy that just asked us a question and you could trade, would you trade Waddle for Rico Dowdle?
Not in Dynasty.
No, in redraft. Dowdle's the guy.
No, I wouldn't.
He's getting the touches. They may go even more run heavy with Cooper Rush in there. If you feel like Waddle isn't going to give you enough production and I can trade him for somebody that's going to get 15, 16 touches a game, maybe I do. Would you trade him for Najee Harris?
Yes, I would for Harris. I think with Dowdle, I might have done that before last week, but I don't know what this Cowboys S show of an offense is going to look like right now. And they're on a bye next week. So you have one total toss-up game, and then they go on a bye. That's not a trade I'm making right now. But Harris, they've had their bye, and I actually like what he's been doing. And I think he's actually looking even better with Russell Wilson in there. Maybe the offense for his part works better. Not making any judgments about Justin Fields, but for the Rams, Puka didn't get suspended, and neither he nor Kupp are on the injury list. So, is this the week?
It's always the week
Until it isn't.
You just with Williams and Nakua and Kupp, you're rolling them out there, and if they get too much focus, and it's warranted to really lock down on them. We've seen Demarcus Robinson step up and make big plays and put up big yardage. So I think it's, I would not hesitate one bit about starting Nakua or Kupp. They're both. It's interesting because if when you watch the games, you'll see it's like, oh, Kupp had 14 targets and Nakua had 12 targets. One of them has like 158 yards and the other one has like 50 yards, but 2 touchdowns.
I was wrong. Dowdle just came off of a bye, but I did just look at their schedule. They have Philly and then Houston and then Washington. I don't think that's particularly great matchups. I still don't think I would trade. And I know I wouldn't in Dynasty. I still don't think I would trade in redraft. I have a feeling Dallas is about to go in the hole. And honestly, if you're right, if they do stick Trey Lance back there, I think that's even worse for the running backs.
Yeah. Unless he all this time got him good.
No. I'm taking the Rams on Monday Night Football.
Another one against my better judgment. I'm going to take the Dolphins. I think they're going to claw their way back.
There's a lot of interesting games this week that I feel like are kind of more 50-50 toss-ups than we'd like to admit.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it for us this week. You have a couple of days before games kick in. Maybe you're in a blizzard situation like me, Dennis. If they need something to occupy their time, what can they do?
Well, they can go to their favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a subscribe, give us a like, leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget, we got a Germany game at 9:30 Sunday morning.
Yeah, it'd be probably more dicey if it was Monday morning. But that'll do it for this week. We will be back on Tuesday when I've been promised that there will be sunshine for me here in Colorado. I'll believe it when I see it.
Look, there can be sunshine and a shitload of snow.
That's what Saturday, I feel like, is going to be like. Be a good indoorsy weekend anyway. But I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I hope your fantasy teams do well, and we will see you on Tuesday.